All right, so welcome back to Couples Talk, and today we continue our discussion on keys to a happy marriage. Now, did I miss something, sweetheart? My sweetheart, look at me. As soon as a woman start look at you, you start getting concerned if you said or did something wrong. But maybe we're not accustomed to our spouse looking at us a certain way. We're always a little jumpy when it comes to that. But we started this last session and we're continuing this session in terms of keys to happy marriage part two. If you missed the first segment of this video, please free to go back and just check our timeline. You will see the first part of this discussion. Now, are we saying that if you follow these keys automatically, you're not going to have problem in your marriage? No, not at all. But at the same time, we believe that if you've tried everything else, you've tried, talking to each other, certain things not happen. Maybe you might find a few lessons in these keys. I'll tell you off the bat, some of the premise of these keys comes from a biblical perspective, a Christian perspective. So you will notice that we're spending a lot of time in the Bible. We're doing some discussions and so a little different from what we've done. A lot of the times we've shared discussions, things that we've shared from our personal experience and so on. But we just found a level of inspiration from this study, and yes, it is a Bible study. It's a Bible study about your marriage, and we think that the lessons that you could glean from these you could still apply. We will say you still need to take each of these based on where you are in your relationship, and everyone is different, and I'm jumping a little bit ahead, but one of our keys this evening, and we're going to dive deeper into it, says agree that divorce is not the answer. But suppose you're already divorced and you're now looking to mend. We're saying come from that perspective where you are, still take the lessons, see what it could be done, and then apply it. Any welcome for our guest tonight, Charlene?
So, welcome everyone, and thank you again for being present, for another episode of Couples Talk. As my husband mentioned, we're continuing from last week's topic. We're talking about keys for a happy marriage. Now, most persons might be saying, how could they automatically be keys for a happy marriage? But there are fundamentals that we can use, foundations we can use in order to guide our marriage forward, in order to help you to reach a stage where you can be happy with your spouse. It's not an automatic journey, but it takes work, it takes determination, it takes love, and for those of us who believe in the Bible and in God, it takes a biblical and spiritual perspective in order to guide us forward. So we're going to continue with the discussion this evening.
And there is nothing that gets more biblical than praying. And that's our first key for tonight. And it says not just pray. There are times that you need individual prayer. I am saying when you pray together, not just pray wholly, but pray aloud together, there is just a power that comes from hearing your spouse pray on your behalf, pray for your well-being, pray for your situation at work, pray and don't use the prayer to beat each other. Don't know saying I pray for this man that he's calm, his temper, and he don't fart like that in the room and kill me.
Well, maybe I should really put that prayer.
No. So this is not the type of prayer that you are now trying to beat each other up with the prayer. No. You are praying for the well-being of each other. If you know your partner has a fear of the job and the anxiety of probably losing the job, and you know how, pray for security, for finances. Pray that so pray from a good intentionality about the prayer. All right. And one of the text reference for this evening says, watch and pray lest you enter into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. And this all is a prayer for protection, because you're going to have to pray for each other as we go out there, that we're not tempted, that other persons are not working to destroy our marriage, because not everyone have your best intention in mind. You go out there, there's some people that are jealous of your relationship for no proper reason. They just see you and your spouse and you look happy, you look like everything is, they don't know what you're fighting. They don't know what. Sometimes you have to put on a good face because you're going through a struggle, you're going through a hard time, And people will look at you, be jealous of you, and they're wishing bad of you. And sometimes you have to pray for protection from those type of advances. People are looking to set you up, lie on your behalf, and you have to sometimes pray for that protection. The second one there, Charlene, says what?
Pray for one another. James 5:16.
And so you could read the other one time.
If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives it to all liberally. And this is taken from James 1:5.
And there are times that you're sitting in your marriage and you're saying, I don't know what to do about this woman. I've tried all these kind of things and it don't seem like anything is working. She just seems like she's just trip off the rockers and you don't understand why. God is saying he could give you the wisdom to understand what is going on. And if it is, there are times that you need to speak. And God could tell you that now is a time to speak. But there's times that you need to be silent. And it's hard to decide when should you do the other. And I'm saying God could do that for you. And this is the time that we're saying, so pray for each other, pray together, that takes place. And I said this already, but pray aloud for each other. Kneel before God and ask him for the true love for one another, for forgiveness, for strength, for wisdom. All right? Over to you, Charlie.
Agree that divorce is not the answer. I know many people, when they hear this particular part, they get very weary and frustrated and say, you don't know my struggles. What you mean I'm not supposed to get divorced? No, that is God's word. That's not our word. That was taken from the Bible. And we've had our struggles. And I must admit, there are moments I'm like, why did I marry this man? I should get divorced. The thought did cross my mind. I'm sitting out there thinking, maybe I should get a divorce. But then I hear the Holy Spirit say, but you asked me to get married. And I blessed this marriage and I put you there. No, you talk to me, you want to run away because things get hard. And then I'll get upset with myself. I'll take a drive to the beach, fight to the Lord and go back home and say, I need to work on this, So it always sounds like a struggle and it always sounds like the easiest way out. But trust me, running away from your problems is not going to solve it. And many times we assume that divorce is going to solve your problem. But trust me, it's going to create more heartache than you even realize. I mean, some people bounce back. There are a lot of persons are broken after divorce because of that emotional struggle they go through, that ripping apart of each other, and they still have to fight up with emotions. And as statistics have said, second marriages, when persons remarry, there's a higher rate of divorce because many persons don't deal with their previous baggage when they go into a remarriage. So now there's a more issue taking place. And if it's a second marriage for you and a first with a person, the other person has to deal with your baggage because you bring in all these anger issues from the previous marriage and saying, I'm not going through this again, rather than seeing that problem was then and you need to work on it now. So what it is to avoid all of that, try work on it now so you don't have to go through all the heartache and pressure. So as the Bible says, what God has joined together, let not man separate. Matthew 19:6.
And this one says, whoever divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, and marries another, commits adultery. And whoever marries her who is divorced commits adultery. Now, what comes to mind, a lesson here for me, Charlene, is don't use the word divorce as a threat. You want to get something out of your marriage. You realize somebody's not doing what you expect they should be doing. So you use the word divorce almost like a threat. If you continue like this, I'm going to divorce you. We're saying don't have that word in the vocabulary as a threat, because here's the thing. If you start something and someone now calls your bluff and it goes down just a part that you didn't really want it to go there, but you were just using it as a threat, as a something to get the person not to do, and it gets there, and then you're wondering, how did we get here? How did we get to this point? But it started with the words. Words have power. You notice Charlene said she's thought about it. But it's different than thinking about it. We can't help what we think. You could change the thought, you could, but once you get it out and once you say it, you can't take it back. And you could start a chain reaction before you even know it. You're in the divorce court and it's not what you intended, but then why did you say it? So you agree on from and be intentional that divorce is not the answer. And even though the Bible gave um, the reason of adultery as the one of the areas that you can, and God acts, he accepts that based on what man desired, it doesn't mean that you should use that your first avenue to escape. As Charlene said, we have to recognize that God, there's a union that it's bigger than just a physical thing. It's an emotional and spiritual thing. When we get married, there was a reason that you decided to say those words, for death do us part, even if you're not a traditional type to repeat those types of words, but it's still, that was the intent when you did get married. It was not for you to be marry and divorce, marry and divorce. It's just never God's intent. So don't use the words. Try to, as much as possible, agree that this isn't an option for us. It's not that we're saying that you will continue in a sense of a cycle where things are not changing, things are not working. But we're saying, as much as possible, do not start with this in mind, because if you treat it like that, you will always have one door out, one foot out, and another foot in. And that is not a premise from where you want to start from. Another text here says, for a woman who has a husband is bound by the law to her husband as long as he lives. Romans 7:2. Johnny laughed at that. What happened, Charlie? It sounds like a little bit of a conviction, like it's what it sounds like a jail or what?
Yes, it sounds like a jail, like I'm bound by this man, so I can't leave. And a man hears this and he's willing to start to beat you with
But
a rod.
it's something wrong with being in jail with someone you love.
Why would I want to be in jail?
You see, jail is a state of mind.
What is a state of mind? No.
It's not about where you are, but who you there with.
Oh.
You never hear the song, I'd rather be in hell with you than, but no, I don't think
No,
that
that
happened.
was no, that was not that.
That's not
no,
the right
I know.
analogy. All right. Our second point there, Sean, you can share that.
The ties of marriage are meant to be indissoluble. What in the
Indissoluble.
Yeah, I can't pronounce
indissoluble.
Indissoluble. I can't pronounce big words. And indestructible. Divorce is permissible only in cases of adultery, but even then, it is not demanded, only permitted.
And again, what we're saying, it is better if you could find reconciliation more than simply to exit. And that's the intent. You should try. We're not saying it's not a course that sometimes may eventually happen, but let it not be something that you have as your first option. Do your best to just keep that conversation out of your mind as much as possible.
And think about it this way: if you fall that hard already and you reach to the bottom of the ground, and both of you have to go through this whole thing, at this point in time, what else do you have to hide from each other? So now you can reconcile and move forward, and you'll be surprised. Again, because the psychologists mean studies have actually shown people who have moved past this, well, not everyone, but a lot of relationships have actually healed from adultery and have actually been in a different place in a happier moment, because now they're able to see each other in a different light. They're more vulnerable with each other. There are many success stories about it. I know not everyone believes that is possible, because pride tells us and society tells us, oh, you have to get rid of the man or the woman. But you'll be very surprised a lot of couples that you've seen around who have actually went through adultery and are better at this moment, and you will not even believe the struggles they went through. But not everyone will tell you of the struggle until they're like 70, and then they're on the deathbed, because at that point in time they couldn't be bothered to tell you the story. But you'll be very surprised to realize in church, out of church, a lot of couples going through it. And we're not talking about people who have repeatedly continued cheating after the person decides. We talk about true reconciliation.
All right. Keep the family circle closed tightly, right? keep the family circle close tight. And we've probably mentioned this in different degree throughout the some of the talks we've had.
Mhm.
Your marriage is a family you have now created. It's always interesting that persons has this analogy that blood is thicker than water, and they look at family first as you and someone is brother or sister or cousin or so on, right? Here is the thing that we need to consider. Who was the first family? And again, we're looking at a biblical perspective.
Adam and Eve.
Adam and Eve,
And they
as
weren't brother and
they
sister.
weren't brother and sister. And God was trying to teach us that the family starts with husband and wife first. It is a miracle that is created when you agree to marry each other. You become family. There is the reference says you become one. So it also means that you are first family even before the children and so on. So and there are persons that will tell you that, and it happens in marriage, that you would put your children above your spouse. That's not biblical. It's you are first family with your spouse, and that means your family dynamics change when you decide to get married. So if you now get married and that's now your family, your dictionary, your words have to change. That's your family now. You now have to guard what happens inside of your family, and the mentality have to shift that your mother, your father, your sister, your cousin, they are family, yes.
They're relatives. Not all
But I love that.
Not all the law actually says
The
not all the
relatives. I like that
The law
reference. But
actually
your
says
family
relative.
now stays within that immediate bond, your spouse, your children, and so forth. We're talking marriage here now, so we're talking your spouse. So when your stress is doing, and you need to let it out, you need to tell someone about what's going on with you. I'm saying that first person that you want to speak about your challenges that you're going through, let that be your spouse. Let that be that person that you're able to work those things with, because you got to be so mindful to be sharing your darkest issues about your spouse with your relative, because they can't forget that and they can't get past that. So sometimes you go and share that this person is doing this person is cooking well for me, this person, they can't forget that. So now you've moved past it and you've grown from it. You and your spouse have gone over it and overcome that. But your relative is still thinking about that issue that you told and that creates another dynamic. They start, so you got to be very mindful about that. And even if you need to talk to someone, first God, and maybe a trusted counselor or so forth that is understanding the dynamics of what's happening there. But just be very careful about just sharing those types of challenges you're having within your family unit with just relatives or things like that without understanding. And if you, especially if they're not invested in your success, they may not give you the best advice here. And this is not under the premise that there's some abuse and you're keeping it inside. We're saying this is not in that degree. If you are experiencing abuse or so forth, we're saying get help. That I want to make that explicitly clear. This is not under an issue where there's some physical or mental abuse that is taking place. Under those premises, seek help and as much as possible, so that someone that you could trust that could really help you to get out of that situation and to be able to ensure that you get some level of protection. Right? So biblical reference here, and the first one says, "You shall not commit adultery." Exodus 20:40. So you also recognize here that the family unit title is not just relative. We're also saying that they're friends, and especially of the opposite sex or so forth. You got to be very careful of understanding the boundaries of your marriage. You have to also be mindful. Friends at work or so on that you've worked with, you've gotten close to, you start sharing issues you're going on. They're listening. They're understanding what's happening, and they can now pry on that. So be very careful. See, it starts right off the bat that we're even talking about your boundaries here as well. It says, "The heart of her husband safely trusts her. She does him good and not evil all the days of her life. Proverbs 31:11 and 12.
The Lord has been witness between you and the wife of your youth, with whom you have dealt treacherously. Malachi 2:14.
So the second reference here is family intimacy must not be shared with others, not even with parents. It is a great sin and tragedy to break this God-given rule. So, and as I said, we're not talking abusive, but we're talking sometimes you just have internal family dynamics and issues that you got to work through with each other. Be mindful as you start to extend that circle. You create more dynamics, and you make it sometimes more difficult to overcome the challenges that you're working through, because these are two imperfect people that are coming together to get married. And once we start and understand that, we then understand that we're now working with each other. And this is another lesson in this. It's not your job to change the other person. The best thing that God wants from us is for us to be a better spouse. That's our first responsibility, to be the type of spouse that you would want someone to be for you. That's your focus. And the second one is to pray for your spouse. That's God's job, to work on that part of that equation and leave that to God, because trust me, if he could change you and you've had work that you need to do, then he could also change your spouse. Focus on you and then pray for God to work on your spouse and let him take care of the rest. What you, Charlotte?
A third person to sympathize or listen to complaints is a tool of the devil to estrange the hearts of husband and wife. That just made me smile.
I love it when you start getting slow and talking like
Watch now. You see, as they get married, God have mercy. There's some men and women out there. All of a sudden, you're looking nicer and juicier and exciting and sexy, and all of a sudden, now, you sure everything okay? You did a shoulder to cry on. How the treated at home? How things going? And you with your chup yourself. Oh, you see that man? I can't take him in. And here the man telling you, girl, and I would have never do that if it was me. And you feel like excited. All he wants is sex, because trust me, when you get it sexy, he taking you away, he marrying you, he making life easier. So now you have more complications. Sometimes we find things so nice, the grass seems green on the other side, and we get like excited and we want to run across in that green grass. But then when you finally stand up in the green grass and you look and you realize where the grass is green, the grass grown. It was just camouflage. Be very careful. Be very, very careful. You see all these other people out there who you think have your best interest in hand? Trust me, they don't. Go to God.
so take this next one, Charlie.
God describes love. Make it your daily goal to measure up for.
And this reference, if you want a definition of love, I don't think there's a better one that could be taken from, and this is taken from 1 Corinthians chapter 13. It says, love suffers long and is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not parade itself. Is not puffed up, does not behave rudely, does not seek its own, is not provoked, thinks no evil, does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoice in the truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. There isn't a stronger reference and definition of love that I've seen than that you could find as in 1 Corinthians 13, especially from a marital perspective. We may not have all these lined up, but we're saying this is God's definition that we should aspire to. We should read it and ask ourselves, am I hoping all things for my marriage and my spouse? Am I willing to endure all things for the success of my marriage and my spouse? Do I believe and give my spouse the benefit of the doubt and trying to work through it and to bear all things? It goes into to speak to the context of, It does not envy. And it's amazing how there's sometimes how we're envious of each other. Our success comes from whatever takes place with your spouse, and there are times that your spouse gets a promotion and they get certain praise, and you are there wishing, but why not me? How is it noticing my spouse and they're not noticing me? That is your one. God is saying, don't be envious of each other. You're one team. If your spouse is successful, it's a reflection on you, and you are successful. But it takes an intentionality. Does not parade itself. Don't get proud with each other and so on. But that's a task that we have to aspire to every single day. It's not going to happen overnight, but God is saying, this is my definition of love. Let's try to measure up on a day-to-day basis to look back at it and see, look at yourself, do introspection. Am I doing these things in my relationship so that I could measure up to God's expectation? What about you?
I was enjoying listening to you. That
I find today's couples talk is Josh talking.
Well, Josh is excited tonight. But you know, as in terms of focusing on this, when he talk about not being envious, I mean, I will confess, you know, I always tell him, he gets it easier when it comes to jobs, and I've had it so struggles, and it has been difficult for me, and he just breezed through, like he just keeps getting them, he haven't had that work hard thing, and he tell me, but you have your blessings. And I was like, but you just seem to have it so easy, it's like everything just works out so easy for you. It's like I have to really work hard to get there, But as the Bible says, you shouldn't be envious, and I mean, it happens in marriage. I mean, it didn't cause us a fight or any disagreement, anything like that. I guess it was just a low point for me, Sometimes you will have that in the marriage. So just to let you know that it is normal. Don't feel that if you commit the ultimate sin, but at least be able to share, talk about it, and think with each other and realize that, as he said, his success is my success. So I'm proud of him for, the things he has accomplished. And, I'll continue to support him. I'll continue to be proud of him and things he accomplished.
All right, so we have two more keys to share with you tonight. The second to last one is, remember that criticism and nagging destroy love. Remember that criticism and nagging destroy love. And our Bible reference here says, husbands, love your wives and do not be bitter toward them. Colossians. This is taken from Colossians. I think my wife left out the exact reference. And this is, so while I read, Charlene would see if she could find that reference. It is Colossians 3:19. So that's Colossians 3:19. And the other one says, better to dwell in the wilderness than with a contentious and angry woman. I didn't say it, the Bible said it.
Right? I know, I was like, oh wait, why the Bible said that? But anyway, he said, when there's a woman, there's always argue, women just get quiet. So, like, why would God have to tell us that to be contentious?
I didn't say it.
When we don't really argue, was you guys are always arguing and saying, I think God had to tell us we too cantankerous. Imagine a man see you and live in the wilderness and live in the house with you when they cantankerous. Women, we need to watch ourselves and all that arguing and fussing. I think it's really, really carrying us down a dark path.
And I mean, it's a reality of how a lot of time we function. As a wife, as a spouse, I know you want to solve issues, and you want to solve it now. And there are times that we process things different and slow. So it's the dynamics, and God knows our differences. But the advice here is to be mindful of criticism, not just nagging, but criticism. There are times that your spouse don't do things the way you would like it to be done. Be careful of criticizing in a negative way. You always do this, you never do this, you don't do things properly, and so forth. And this is how the devil works. While you are criticizing your spouse, you don't do this properly, you don't cook properly, you don't sew properly, or so forth, there's someone else that are encouraging and telling your spouse good things. What do you think is happening? What do you think is the seed that's being planted? You criticize, and someone on the outside is encouraging and lifting up and giving compliments. It doesn't take long for that to seem more attractive what is happening on the outside and create dynamics. And even if they may not leave, it creates dynamics on the inside. Look for the best in your spouse. It's not to say that the negatives aren't there, but uplift the good things. Spend more time focusing on the things that your spouse is doing well and less on the things that you may not necessarily please. Because as I said, you could focus on you. You can't change your spouse. No matter what you do, that's not you cannot. You could say that this don't you don't necessarily like this, and you find the most appropriate time and when to say it in a way that also uplift the person and speaks to the good that they do. So you have to find that place of being able to be constructive, because you have to share. If you don't like something, it's an injustice to continue pretending that you like it. That's also not good, because your spouse might be going ahead doing this thing thinking that it doesn't affect you. So you do need to communicate it, but you got to be careful not to be constantly criticizing and nagging. It says stop criticizing, nagging, and fault finding. The husband or wife may lack much, but nagging won't help. Don't expect perfection. Bitterness will result. One of the things I remember to this day, when we were getting premarital counseling, I'll tell you, I said I listened. It's years after that thing came back to me, and I recognized I didn't take the advice, and I wish I did. I remember it was Pastor Edwards who had told us, and he told me, this was this was a counsel for me. I can't even recall if he pointed out, but he said, accept the version of Charlene that I'm marrying today as the best version of the person I'll be getting. And if I get more, consider it a bonus, but don't look to be improving her. She's not a work in progress, or he is not a work in progress that you're now saying, well, yeah, I'll get him at this stage, but I'll work on him so that he could get. I got her at this stage, but I'll work on her so that she will eventually get to. No. The version of the person that you're marrying, have married, accept them that this is the best version of that person. Love them for the version they are today, and pray for their well-being. If you get more, consider it a bonus, but don't be having an active task to say they're not where I want them to be, but I'll work on them. No, that's not what God is saying. Accept them, so that if you do so, you would find you would be less focused on the things that you want to change and see the benefit and the good things that you're getting in return, because they're a full package. You have to accept the good with the bad, and we always have to put a disclaimer. We're not talking about continual abuse and things like that or so on, but we all have issues. We're not perfect. And these are some of the things that the spouse might die with it. And really and truly, if you had simply just accept that, that's him. If that's something I could live with and work with, fine, and I'll focus on the other things and you would be surprised to know how they improve some other areas that you didn't even recognize because you're not looking at it. All right. So our last point, Charlene, I'll let you take that one.
Do not overdo in anything. Be temperate.
All right, and our Bible reference here says,
everyone who competes for the prize is temperate in all things. 1 Corinthians 9:25. Love does not seek its own. Shortened version, of course, 1 Corinthians 13:4-5.
All right, and our we have a few more references here. It says, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do all to the glory of God. And that's taken from 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 31. Another one says, I discipline my body and bring it into subjection. 1 Corinthians 9:27. And our last set of reference for this evening. Go ahead, Charlie.
If anyone will not work, neither shall he eat. So you need to work to eat. 2 Thessalonians 3:10. Marriage bed is honorable among all, and the bed undefiled. Hebrews 13:4.
All right, so we're touching a wide range of things here. And again, remember it's saying, do not overdo it, anything, be temperate. So this last one we could work backwards. They're talking even in sex. You have to still be temperate. And the Bible is saying here, look, your marriage bed is honorable. The things that you are doing together within your marriage bed, and that you understand and that you recognize that is something that you are comfortable with, that is your business, and that's how you. But at the same time, be temperate. You can't necessarily just decide, well, look, you know what, I'm going to. Your wife is tired, she's not necessarily, and you know what, I want sex, I want more, I want to do. It's saying still be temperate, and understand that you're in this together, and you would want to be able to look for the best in each other. But even outside of that, even in the things that you want, in the things that you want to do, you sometimes are trying to do more than you is able to do, and you put your marriage at risk. You're trying to keep up with the Joneses. They have a big house and new furnitures, and that might not be within your budget today, but because your friend have it or your neighbor have it, you're saying that, look, let's call courts, let's call standards, and you might be listening, wondering who's courts and standards, but these are basically financial institutions that you could get,
not financial
furniture places that you could get on higher purchase. So you might go and get higher credits or take on debt simply but because you want more. The Bible is saying, hey, don't overdo. We have seen some of the best time in our marriage when we didn't have a lot. And in those small times is where you could really be thankful for the things that you have. But have goals, have aspirations, have things that you want to work on. But at the same time, learn to be content with the things that God has given you, and be very much so happy for what you have in each other. Count your blessings, I think, is the lesson that I would say here. So the subject matter here is, do not overdo in anything. Be temperate.
It actually could apply to do not underdo, because some persons might think that means I don't have to do much. But when he meant be temperate, he means don't do little or nothing, because remember it also indicates if you do not work, you will eat. So it means doing less too. So don't focus on the fact that I just say overdo. It can be underdo, if that is a phrase.
So we're wrapping up here. So it says, look, overdoing will ruin your marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So will underdoing. Work, love, rest, exercise, play, worship, meals, social contacts must be carefully balanced in your marriage, or something will snap. All right. So even in overwork and lack of sleep, proper food, exercise make a person critical, intolerant, and negative. I'm guilty of this. There are times that I'm working late. There's times I want to get certain things done. I'm doing video editing, and sometimes I need to just recognize that what I don't get done today, tomorrow's another day. Leave it. Go to bed with my wife. Go to bed with Charlie. I'm guilty of that. There are times that we just have to put certain things aside. You can't do everything. All right. Lastly, our last point here is, we mentioned this, sexual abuse destroys a love for holy things and weakens vitality. Marriage gives no license to sexual excesses, degrading, twisted, intemperate sex, and destroy love and respect for one another. All right. Any closing thought for you, Charlie? And thank you again for sticking with us a little bit over. But as we close off, what takeaways would you want to share?
I just want to remind you of all the different points we focus on. First and foremost, pray together. And in all this that we have discussed about being temperate, not overdoing, underdoing, always pray, because with all these struggles that you're going through in the mind, you cannot overcome all these by yourself, because we of ourselves cannot overcome sin, because man is faulty. So once you lay it all at the altar and you see, you put down your knees on the ground and you pray to God and say, Lord, all these different issues I'm going through, I need you to help me to overcome. He will work it through for you. So don't worry, it's not an immediate change. Maybe it depends on the situation. He might make an immediate change, but at least know it's a process, and you have to be willing and able to go through that process. And you have to do it every day, because you have to revitalize yourself every day. You can't pray today for tomorrow and don't pray tomorrow. That's not because you eat every day to get energy. So you have to pray every day for spiritual energy.
I guess my takeaway, the second point to this, agree divorce is not the answer. Sometimes you have to give God time to fix the issues that you're having. So, assuming, let's just say you're praying and you're asking God to help me through this, take divorce out of your vocabulary. Give God a chance to figure it out. There are times when you're going through the hurt and you're going through the pain. It feels like if tomorrow cannot get any better, I might as well cut my losses now. We're saying give God a chance, and you will may be amazed of how He could bring something that was broken to the point which it was better than it started. All right, so that's our point for this evening. Next couple talk, we're going to be concluding our keys to a happy marriage, and we will look at the last few points that we want to share in that regard. So thank you for joining us. If you haven't viewed our previous videos, I would ask that you would just go back to the previous one that we had, and you could click on that. You could watch it and see some of the others. If you haven't shared one of these, please share it with a friend, and remember to click like, subscribe to the channel, and click that notification bell so when we post more videos like this, you'll be notified. We'll see you in the next one.
Okay, bye.